There's a moment when you realize you've been living your entire life like an open book. Every emotion written across your face, every reaction telegraphed before you even know you're having it. People read you like yesterday's news, predict your responses, push your buttons with surgical precision. And in that moment of recognition, you understand something chilling. You've been emotionally naked in a world full of hunters. Most people spend decades trying to be understood, trying to connect, trying to make others feel their pain, their joy, their frustration. They wear their hearts on their sleeves and wonder why they keep getting hurt. They react to every slight, respond to every provocation, defend every accusation. And in doing so, they hand over the keys to their emotional kingdom to anyone clever enough to turn the lock. But what if I told you there's another way? What if emotional invisibility isn't about becoming cold or disconnected, but about becoming strategically unreadable? What if the most powerful people you've ever encountered weren't the loudest or the most expressive, but the ones whose emotions remained a complete mystery? Today, I'm going to show you how to become emotionally invisible in just 5 minutes. Not 5 weeks, not 5 months, but 5 minutes from now. You can start moving through the world like a ghost in plain sight. People will see you, interact with you, even try to provoke you, but they'll never quite know what's happening beneath the surface. And that uncertainty, that inability to predict or control your emotional responses, becomes your greatest source of power. Because here's what nobody tells you about emotional visibility. Every time you react predictably, you lose leverage. Every time someone can accurately guess how you'll respond to criticism, rejection, or pressure, they can manipulate that response. They can push you toward anger, pull you toward sadness, steer you toward doubt. You become a puppet dancing to strings you didn't even know existed. But the emotionally invisible? They're untouchable. Not because they don't feel, but because others can never quite figure out what they're feeling or what they'll do next. And in a world obsessed with reading people, being unreadable is the ultimate advantage. Now, before we dive into the 5-minute transformation, let me be clear about what emotional invisibility is not. It's not suppression. It's not pretending feelings don't exist. It's not becoming a robot or shutting down your humanity. Those approaches create their own problems, their own weaknesses that others can exploit. True emotional invisibility is about control. It's about choosing when, where, and how much of your inner world you reveal. It's about making your emotional responses a conscious decision rather than an automatic reaction. It's about becoming the person who others can't quite figure out, can't quite categorize, can't quite control. Think about the most intriguing people you've ever met. Not the most dramatic or the most emotional, but the ones who left you wondering what they were really thinking. The ones whose reactions surprised you, whose responses you couldn't predict. The ones who seemed to operate by rules you didn't understand. These people understood something fundamental about human psychology. We're drawn to mystery, unsettled by unpredictability, and respectful of what we can't control. When someone's emotional landscape is unclear, we automatically assign them more power, more depth, more capability than we might otherwise. This isn't manipulation in the traditional sense. It's strategic positioning. You're not trying to hurt anyone or gain unfair advantage. You're simply refusing to be an open book in a world full of people looking for something to read. The transformation begins with understanding that your emotions are information, not instructions. Right now, when you feel angry, you probably show anger. When you feel hurt, you probably show hurt. When you feel confused, you probably show confusion. Your emotions are running the show, and everyone around you knows exactly what show they're watching. But emotions are just data. They're telling you something about your internal state, your needs, your boundaries, your values. They're not commands that must be obeyed or displays that must be performed. They're private intelligence that you can choose to act on or not, share or not, express or not. The first step toward emotional invisibility is creating space between feeling and expression. Not suppressing the feeling, but pausing before the expression. In that pause, that tiny gap between stimulus and response, lies your power. Most people's emotional responses are so automatic, they don't even realize they're making a choice. Someone insults them, they feel hurt, they show hurt. Someone challenges them, they feel defensive, they act defensive. Someone ignores them, they feel rejected, they chase validation. But what if, instead of this automatic sequence, you inserted a moment of choice? What if you felt the emotion, acknowledged it privately, and then consciously decided how to respond? What if your face, your voice, your body language became instruments you played rather than reactions that played you? This is where emotional invisibility begins, not in the absence of feeling, but in the presence of choice. The second element is understanding that your reactions are being constantly tested and cataloged by everyone around you. Your family knows exactly which topics make you defensive. Your colleagues know which criticisms make you doubt yourself. Your friends know which buttons to push when they want a specific response. They're not doing this maliciously necessarily. It's just human nature to map the emotional territories of the people around us. We learn what makes someone laugh, what makes them angry, what makes them withdraw, what makes them engage. We create emotional profiles of everyone in our lives, and we use those profiles to navigate our relationships with them. But when you become emotionally invisible, those profiles become useless. People can't map what they can't see. They can't predict what they can't pattern. They can't control what they can't categorize. The third foundation is recognizing that emotional invisibility is not about being mysterious for the sake of mystery. It's about reclaiming agency over your own responses. It's about refusing to be predictable in a world that profits from your predictability. When you're emotionally invisible, conversations change, conflicts change, negotiations change, relationships change, because suddenly, people can't assume they know how you'll react to their words, their actions, their proposals, their provocations. They have to actually listen to what you say, rather than just reading what you feel. They have to engage with your ideas, rather than just manipulating your emotions. They have to treat you as an unknown quantity, rather than a known commodity. And here's where it gets interesting. When people can't read your emotions, they start projecting their own assumptions onto your blank canvas. They fill in the gaps with their own fears, hopes, expectations, and insecurities. Your emotional invisibility becomes a mirror that reflects their inner world back at them. This is when you start to see people more clearly than they see themselves. Because when they're trying to figure you out, they reveal everything about how they think, what they value, what they fear, what they want. The emotionally invisible person becomes a collector of truths that others accidentally reveal while trying to solve the puzzle of your inner state. You gain access to information that people would never consciously share because they don't realize they're sharing it. But perhaps most importantly, emotional invisibility gives you something that most people never experience: true freedom of response. When people can't predict how you'll react, you're free to react however you choose. You're not trapped by their expectations, not limited by your patterns, not controlled by their provocations. You can surprise them with kindness when they expect anger. You can respond with questions when they expect answers. You can offer silence when they expect noise. You can be generous when they expect retaliation. This freedom isn't just powerful in individual interactions. It compounds over time, creating a reputation for unpredictability that precedes you into every room, every conversation, every conflict. People start describing you differently. They use words like hard to read, mysterious, composed, strategic. They stop trying to manipulate you because they don't know which levers to pull. They start respecting your boundaries because they don't know what happens when those boundaries are crossed. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds cold, calculating, manipulative. But consider the alternative. Right now, your emotions are being read, predicted, and used by everyone around you. Your reactions are being triggered on command by people who've learned exactly which words, which looks, which situations will produce the responses they want from you. Is choosing not to be an open book really more manipulative than allowing yourself to be manipulated? Is choosing to have agency over your own responses really less authentic than being a puppet to every emotional trigger that comes your way? The truth is, emotional invisibility isn't about becoming less human. It's about becoming more strategically human. It's about operating from a position of strength rather than vulnerability, choice rather than compulsion. And the beautiful thing about this transformation is that it doesn't require years of therapy, meditation retreats, or personality overhauls. It requires 5 minutes of understanding and a commitment to practice. Because once you see how the game is really played, once you understand the mechanics of emotional manipulation and control, you can't unsee it. You'll start noticing how people probe for your emotional weak spots in casual conversation, how they test your reactions to different topics, different tones, different approaches, how they file away your responses for future use, how they adjust their behavior based on what emotional buttons they've discovered. And instead of being unconscious participants in this dance, you'll become conscious observers. You'll watch the attempts at emotional manipulation with detached curiosity rather than automatic reaction. You'll see the patterns, the strategies, the expectations, and you'll have the power to respond or not respond as you choose. The 5-minute transformation starts with a simple realization. Every emotion you feel is valid, but not every emotion needs to be visible. You can feel frustrated without looking frustrated. You can feel hurt without showing hurt. You can feel angry without acting angry. This isn't about denying your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about creating a buffer zone between your inner experience and your outer expression. It's about making your face, your voice, your body language into conscious tools rather than unconscious broadcasts. Right now, as you're reading this, someone could probably look at your face and get a pretty good read on how you're receiving this information. Are you skeptical? Intrigued? Resistant? Excited? Your micro-expressions, your posture, your breathing patterns are all telling a story about your internal state. But what if they weren't? What if your face remained neutral, unreadable, giving away nothing about your thoughts or feelings? What if people had to actually ask you what you think instead of assuming they already know? The first technique is what masters of emotional invisibility call the neutral mask. It's not about being expressionless like a statue. It's about maintaining a baseline neutrality that reveals nothing about your internal weather. Your face becomes like the surface of a still lake, calm, reflective, but giving no indication of what lies beneath. People can see their own reflection in your composure, but they can't see through to the depths. This neutral mask isn't something you wear all the time. It's something you can deploy strategically when you want to maintain emotional privacy, when someone is probing for a reaction, when you're being tested or challenged, when you need to maintain leverage in a negotiation or conflict. The second technique is response delay. Most people's emotions are connected directly to their mouths with no filter in between. They feel something and immediately express it. They're provoked and instantly react. They're surprised and automatically respond. But emotional invisibility requires inserting a pause between trigger and response. Not a long, obvious pause that makes you seem slow or confused. Just a brief moment where you acknowledge the emotion internally before deciding how to express it externally. In that pause, you ask yourself one simple question. Is showing this emotion right now going to serve my interests or theirs? Am I about to give them exactly the reaction they're looking for? Am I about to confirm their assumptions about how I can be controlled? Sometimes the answer will be yes, showing the emotion serves you. Sometimes vulnerability is strategic. Sometimes an emotional response is exactly what the situation calls for. But the key is that it becomes a choice rather than a compulsion. The third technique is emotional misdirection. Instead of showing the emotion you're actually feeling, you show a different one. Or better yet, you show nothing and let them guess. Someone insults you expecting anger, and you respond with calm curiosity. Someone tries to make you jealous, and you respond with mild amusement. Someone attempts to guilt you, and you respond with polite confusion. This isn't about being dishonest. It's about refusing to be emotionally predictable. It's about making people work harder to understand you instead of giving them easy reads. The fourth technique is the strategic reveal. Occasionally, you allow glimpses of genuine emotion, but you control when, where, and how much. These carefully calibrated moments of visibility become incredibly powerful because they're so rare. When someone who's usually unreadable shows a flash of genuine feeling, people pay attention. They lean in. They remember. Because scarcity creates value, and emotional scarcity creates emotional impact. The fifth technique is mirror deflection. Instead of responding to emotional probes with your own emotions, you reflect the probe back to the person making it. They ask why you seem upset, and you ask why they think you seem upset. They comment on your mood, and you ask what makes them focus on other people's moods. This technique serves two purposes. First, it avoids giving them the emotional read they're seeking. Second, it often reveals their motivations for seeking that read in the first place. Now, as you begin implementing these techniques, you'll notice something interesting happening. People will start responding to you differently, almost immediately. They'll become more cautious, more respectful, more curious. They'll stop assuming they know how you'll react to their words or actions. They'll start paying closer attention to what you actually say rather than just reading what they think you feel. They'll begin treating you as someone whose responses can't be taken for granted. Some people will find this unsettling. They're used to being able to read you, predict you, control you through emotional manipulation. When that ability disappears, they may push harder, probe deeper, try more extreme methods to get the reactions they're accustomed to receiving. This is where your commitment to emotional invisibility will be tested, because the more unreadable you become, the more some people will try to break through your composure. They'll escalate their attempts to provoke visible emotions from you. But this escalation is actually proof that the technique is working. They wouldn't be trying so hard to get a reaction if they weren't losing their ability to control your reactions. Their increased effort is evidence of your increased power. The key is to remain consistent. Don't let their escalation break your composure. Don't reward their increased aggression with the emotional display they're seeking. Instead, maintain your neutral mask, use your response delay, and continue operating from a position of choice rather than compulsion. Over time, most people will adjust to your new emotional boundaries. They'll stop trying to read you because they'll learn that you can't be read. They'll stop trying to manipulate you because they'll realize that you can't be manipulated through emotional triggers. And in that space where manipulation used to live, something better emerges. Genuine communication, real respect, authentic relationship based on what you choose to share rather than what they can extract from you. This is the ultimate goal of emotional invisibility. Not to become cold or disconnected, but to create relationships where your emotions are treated as gifts rather than weapons, where your feelings are respected rather than exploited, where your inner world remains yours until you choose to share it. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it begins the moment you make this decision. Right now, as you finish reading these words, you have a choice. You can close this video and continue living as an open book, letting every emotion broadcast itself across your face, letting others map your triggers and exploit your patterns. Or you can take the first step toward emotional invisibility. Here's what that first step looks like. For the next 24 hours, practice the neutral mask. Not all day, just in moments when you feel someone probing for a reaction. When your coworker makes that passive-aggressive comment, when your family member pushes that familiar button, when someone tests your patience or questions your choices. In those moments, instead of reacting automatically, pause. Feel the emotion internally, acknowledge it privately, then choose your response consciously. Let your face remain calm, unreadable. Let them wonder what you're thinking instead of confirming what they expect. You'll be amazed at how quickly people adjust their behavior when they can't predict yours. How much more respectfully they speak when they can't manipulate your responses. How differently they treat someone whose emotional reactions aren't guaranteed. This isn't about becoming heartless or disconnected from others. It's about becoming connected to yourself in a way that serves your highest interests. It's about refusing to be a reactive victim of every emotional trigger that crosses your path. The people who master emotional invisibility don't feel less than others. They feel just as deeply, love just as fully, experience just as much joy and pain. But they do it from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. They choose when to be seen and when to remain hidden. They decide which emotions serve their goals and which ones serve others' agendas. And perhaps most importantly, they create space for genuine connection. Because when someone chooses to share their emotions with you, rather than having them extracted through manipulation, that sharing becomes precious. It becomes real. It becomes worth protecting. Your emotions are not public property. Your reactions are not entertainment for others. Your inner world belongs to you, and you have every right to keep it private until you decide otherwise. The 5-minute transformation starts now. Not with dramatic changes or complete personality overhauls, but with one simple shift in awareness. You are not required to be readable. You are not obligated to be predictable. You are not responsible for making others comfortable by being emotionally accessible. You can be kind without being vulnerable. You can be present without being transparent. You can engage without being exposed. And in that space between feeling and showing, between experiencing and expressing, you'll find something most people never discover: true emotional freedom. The power to feel everything while revealing nothing unless you choose to. The ability to move through the world like water, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them. Powerful, but impossible to grasp. This is your invitation to disappear in plain sight, to become the person others can't quite figure out, can't quite control, can't quite forget, to join the ranks of the emotionally invisible, those who feel deeply but reveal strategically, who engage fully but remain fundamentally unreachable. The choice is yours. The power has always been yours. The only question now is whether you'll use it.